Hi there, Shedsters. Thank you for joining me in this tiny parish on the edge of Christendom. That place where we may not be big, but we're small. The Holy Shed. And I have to tell you that in sunny Somerset right now, it is peeing down. So I don't know if you can hear that on the roof. Hopefully you can't, but I'm sorry if it's kind of this pitter-pattering of rain in the background. And I should also say that some of you will clearly have an advantage over me because lots of you watch the Holy Shed a bit later on. So you will already know the outcome of England's game with Italy in the Euros, which I don't. I'm going to be watching it very shortly. And I find that whole thing a little bit freaky, to be honest with you, that I'm talking to you about it and you know what I don't know. Can't get my tiny head round that, really. But anyway, whatever, I have been a football fan for long enough now to know that when the chips are down, it really is just a game. And if you believe that. But aside from all this, me and my missus have had a wonderful weekend in rural Warwickshire. I think it was Warwickshire anyway, somewhere in that region of the Midlands, at the wedding of two utterly darling people, Emma and Chris. And we had such a great time. I got to give a talk there. And they arrived in this. Look at this. This was their wedding car. Isn't that cool? VW camper. It's a D-Reg, I noted. So I think that's 1966. And it's in the most amazing condition. Complete with bottle of champers in the back and all that a just married couple could possibly want. And indeed, here they are, the lovely couple, Emma and Chris, looking rather pleased with themselves, and why not? And this is the lovely Emma giving her speech, doing an amazing impression of an angelic visitation, if you ask me, the way she's sort of coming in through the door there. And the groom had a best woman instead of a best man, who did a phenomenal job. So it was just great. And I have to tell you, I love taking part in weddings. It's been ages now. I can't remember the last wedding that I either led or took part in. And I love them so much because very often, you're faced with an audience of people who, on the whole, don't attend church regularly, So it's strange territory, and they come with their own expectations. So I think it's just a marvellous opportunity to shatter a few stereotypes and get across what I believe so deeply, that faith and religion are essentially about love, and all the other guff that sometimes goes with it, which is what people expect when they come to church, really has nothing to do with it at all. So I want them to feel that they've come and it's been a pleasure and they haven't been preached at, which I have to say sometimes is the case. And I've had such great experiences. Excuse me. I think one of my favourite memories of a wedding that I took it was just a few years back now, when the best man, bit of a joker I have to say, when I asked him for the rings, he pulled out two little hula hoops, the little round crisps, and he placed them on the book where I would normally expect the rings to be placed, with a smug look on his face. So, not to be outdone, I looked as if it was all just part of the ceremony and prayed a blessing over the hula hoops and gave them to the couple to feed each other with. And I have to tell you, it was one of the funniest, most moving, religious atmosphere busting nuptial communion experiences ever. Absolutely terrific. Anyway, here's to you, Emma and Chris, and to any others who've just tied the knot after waiting, after one cancellation after another. It must have been very testing and trying. So we wish you all the very best. So, moving on, as usual, we're going to begin with a candle moment today. So if you've got a candle handy, this would be a good time to take a hold of it. And given the theme that we're looking at today, I would like us to light a flame for people who have felt or who do feel clobbered by religion. Clobbered by the Bible, clobbered by the judgments of self-righteous people who I think just need to learn to open their hearts to love. So if you've been clobbered, light it for yourself. But let's open our hearts, reach out to everyone who has suffered or is suffering in the name of God as we light this candle for them. And you might like to join me in this little prayer. God, grant us the joy of knowing that we are loved beyond measure, wisdom to recognize those who crave love, even when that may not be obvious, and tireless resolve to treat others the way we wish to be treated. Amen. Right, so I believe it's always a good thing, it's always good practice in theology to begin by acknowledging your presuppositions, if you know what I mean, the things that are your starting point, your fundamental beliefs that you bring to the process, really, the thing which inevitably will colour the way that you approach the subject. And, in recent weeks, for example, I've talked about feminist theology, which begins with a presupposition of gender equality. That's the starting point. So where the Bible is or appears to be prejudiced against or excluding of women, those texts will be read critically. They will be perhaps opposed or protested, even rejected as divine revelation, because they really stand in opposition to something that is fundamental to the way you are looking at life and the way probably you look at God too. So Paul, for example, may have said that wives were to be subject to their husbands, but feminist theology says, hell no, honey. That just is the opposite of where so many people in a feminist position are coming from. Now, some people will say, oh yeah, but I don't have any propositions, I just read the Bible, brother, and believe what it says. To which I say, balderdash, or something similar, because actually it's impossible not to have presuppositions, prior beliefs, or prior commitments when reading the Bible. However much you may think you don't have them, we all do have them. So, for instance, for some people it may be that the Bible's infallibility is their presupposition, or that homosexuality is unnatural, or that other faiths are erroneous. Things which, actually aren't ever stated in the Bible, and yet inform and colour the way that some people read or interpret it. So I'll begin by laying on the table one of my presuppositions, which is that divine truth is bigger than Christianity. Yeah, that's my presupposition, that divine truth is bigger than Christianity. I don't believe that Christianity is the final word or the only source of divine truth or the only way to know God. And for me, as I say, that's a given, a starting point, which I remember I first spoke out loud when I was invited to speak at a large, well-known Christian event in this country. Among other things, I had been invited to lead a seminar with two other speakers on the subject of different faiths, and each of us was allotted 20 minutes to talk about the errors, of either Islam, Hinduism or Buddhism. I was assigned Buddhism. So I said, hang on, I don't really know anything about Buddhism. Oh, don't worry, it's all in the notes, I was assured. But I think you can guess what comes next, don't you? The notes really, really didn't help. In fact, they sent my blood pressure through the roof. And I just said, this is the hatchet job. If a non-Christian wrote something like this about Christianity, we would go ballistic, and rightly so. So you may also have guessed that this didn't go down too well, nor did my suggestion that we should perhaps get some real members of other faiths to come and speak for themselves, and we could interact and dialogue with them. Yeah, I was politely told that this probably wasn't the right subject for me. And that was when I came out as believing that the Christian faith is a way to understand and connect with God, but not the only way. And as you also may guess, that was the end of my invitations to speak at that particular event. But what about John 14:6? You know that verse in John's Gospel which says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. You know, this is probably the most common question that I get asked when I am going around talking to different Christian audiences, partly because I suppose it seems to be such a black and white statement. But that's only, I think, it only comes across the black and white statement when we have been primed to read it as a central plank in an exclusivist approach to Christianity. So if you step back a moment from that and look at the passage itself, John 14 is the start of what's often called the final discourse of Jesus in John's Gospel, which is really a sort of protracted goodbye to his disciples as he prepares them for his departure and what's going to follow. In the build-up to this, Jesus had been determined, against all advice, he'd been determined to go to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover, which was a sensitive political time when the Romans were very jittery about Jewish uprisings, because it was often at these feasts when, you know, people got unsettled and they began to rebel against the kind of Roman authorities. And Jesus knew full well what he was doing. You know, he knew what was going to happen, especially when he, you know, turned over the tables in the temple. When he arrived in Jerusalem, he knew that this is going to stir up trouble and trigger probably his arrest and maybe lead to his execution, which of course it did. So the final discourse, these several chapters in John's Gospel, toward the end of John's Gospel, are his cryptic, and it is a cryptic discourse, but it's his cryptic long goodbye. Okay. Now, after telling the disciples that one of them would betray him and also predicting that Peter would deny him 3 times, you could understand that the mood among the disciples was, a little bit tense. They were anxious about what it was that was going on here. So Jesus assures them at the beginning of John 14, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also me, trust me. You know, in my Father's house are many dwelling places, and I'm going to prepare a place for you, and I'll come again and take you to myself. So in other words, what he's saying is, don't worry, it's okay. There's a bigger picture here. It's going to be all right. And by the way, you already know the way to the place where I'm going. Well, Thomas, blunt-speaking Thomas, pipes up and says, actually, Jesus, we've no idea where you're going. So how the heck can we know the way? And that's when Jesus says, in response to that, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and so on. Well, over time, this statement, this verse, has become what I call a clobber text. You know, so whenever a well-meaning Bible-punching Christian is arguing with a non-believer or a woolly liberal like me, trying to persuade us or trying to prove that only Christians get to go to heaven, they pull out this clobber text and pow, there you are. It's our way or no way is what they're saying, really. So without believing in Jesus and joining us, Hindus and Muslims and all non-Christians are basically going to hell. But you know, when people quote this in that way, this clobber text, they seldom quote the verse properly, which states, Jesus said to him. Do you get that? Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It was an answer to a question, a specific answer to a specific question in a specific context, you know? So what was the question? Well, the question wasn't, this is for sure, the question wasn't, what about Muslims and Buddhists and atheists? Do they get to go to heaven? No. It wasn't a generalized answer to a generalized question about Christians. Actually, it wasn't about non-Christians at all. It was about them, the disciples. Jesus was pastorally addressing their deep sense of loss and fear and foreboding that was, rising within them. It was like they were saying, Jesus, what the hell's going on here? You're scaring us now. Where are you going? How are we going to know the way? What are you on about? But you do know the way, Jesus says. You've been with me for years now. You've seen my way. You've been part of my way. It's me. Me. It's who I am. It's everything that you've seen in me. This way, this lived truth, this way of being that I've shown you is the only way to God. The way, the truth, and the life isn't beliefs about God or Jesus or heaven. It's him. It's what he embodied, but which I believe is present elsewhere too. And the wonderful Frederick Buechner, I've quoted before, he puts it like this. He says, Jesus did not say that any particular dogma or creed was the way, the truth, and the life, but that he was. He didn't say that we could come to the Father by believing certain doctrines, even about him. He said that it was by him, by living, sharing in, being caught up by his way, by the spirit that he embodied and expressed, that was how, he said, we come to the Father, or Mother, if you prefer, as I do. John 14:6 isn't there in the text as a clobber verse to say Christianity is the only true way. No. It's a deeply personal assurance of his trustworthiness. One of the great problems in a lot of Christian thinking, I reckon, is a distortion of what faith really means. In New Testament Greek, the New Testament Greek word for faith is pistis. And the core meaning of this word is trust or trustworthiness. Not believing in certain things, it's trust. And in classical Greek culture and in the New Testament, pistis, faith is the personification of trust and reliability. But then over the years, starting way back there with all those hair-splitting arguments in the early centuries about orthodoxy and heresy, and the whole obsession with creeds that were intended to kind of nail everything down and remove every loophole, faith shifted from trust in a person to belief in a prescribed set of propositions. And so it's a case of believe these things and you're one of us. You're saved, you go to heaven. Take a different view and you're a heretic, and you'll land up sidelined, excommunicated, persecuted, and worse. So I'm not for a moment saying that beliefs are unimportant. I love beliefs. I'll argue about them till the cows come home. But Christian faith isn't belief in propositions. It's trust in a person. Faith in the Christian tradition is personal. For Jesus, truth was a way of being, a way of living, not a doctrine written out and placed up there on the wall or something. Truth was a way of being, a way of living. Truth was faithfulness, integrity. Don't take my word for it. Read the Gospels. Listen to Jesus. He never preached orthodoxy, correct belief. He taught, as I've said before, orthopraxis, correct behavior. For Jesus, it was about deeds, not creeds. That's the message of Jesus. And it's therefore perfectly possible to be on Christ's way with his mark upon you without ever having heard of Christ, because the way is bigger than the historical person. And it's just as possible to be on your way to God, although maybe you don't even believe in God, because it's not about words. Faith needs to be treated, I think, as a verb, something we do, not a noun. It's a way of being, not a set of beliefs. So, let me make it clear. I am a self-confessed Christian. I don't particularly like that word. I wish that it had never been invented, but it's there. It's part of the whole landscape now. And that's me. I am a self-confessed Christian. But I really loved it when an atheist neighbour in North London, when we lived there, said to me one morning, we were out in the street talking, and she was there with her wife, and she said to me, "I know you're a vicar, Dave, but I don't think you're a Christian," which is kind of like, ooh. But she went on to say, "I think you're a follower of Jesus." Now, blinking heck. I will take that all day long. I am the way and the truth and the life is an answer to a question. But check it out for yourself. The question isn't what's going to happen to non-Christians. It's much more, how are we going to get by without you? And Jesus was reassuring a frightened person, a scared bunch of people, that everything he'd taught and showed them about God was trustworthy. It's okay. Don't let your hearts be troubled. So finally, let's kind of go back to this Clobber Texts thing, which is part of what the title I gave to today. In Sunday school, for me, a very, very long time ago now, in Sunday school, I was taught that the Bible was the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God. So, we used to have something called sword drill. Some of you may have experienced this yourself. It was a kind of game of memorizing Bible verses, otherwise known as children's brainwashing, I reckon. And but I was pretty good at it. I had quite a good memory back then. So the teacher would call out a reference in the Bible, and we'd have to sort of shoot our hands up, hold up our swords, as it were, and recite the verse back by memory. So it'd be like Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Luke 13:3. But unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. Or Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to sup with him and he with me. Funnily enough, we never had 1 John 4:16. God is love, and those who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. We didn't have Ecclesiastes 9:9. Go, eat your bread with enjoyment and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has long ago approved of what you do. No, didn't have any of them. Very selective. Which is why I say, in a way, it is a form of brainwashing, really. It's a way of sort of, mentoring, but perhaps more grooming, actually, of a mentality, and not just about what we're reading, but about a way of approaching the Bible, in this kind of proof texting sort of way. Bible bashing, of course, is a metaphor, but I have to say, in the Brethren church I grew up in, there was a bit of a competition for who had the biggest Bible to bash with. But the tragedy is that a lot of people have been bashed. A lot of people have been have been clobbered with the Bible, with Bible texts, about being divorced or having an abortion or being gay. The Bible has been, still is, for many, a cruel weapon of prejudice, exclusion, abuse, even hatred, to be honest, at times. But just very, very damaging. Just in the things I've mentioned there, I had a message only a couple of weeks ago from someone who, in many ways has broken free from this kind of Bible bashing past that she had. But she has gone through a divorce, and she's struggling still with whether it's okay to go and date somebody else now, or whether she's bound by that first marriage. And it's a process of sort of throwing off, and it's very insidious the way that these ways of reading the Bible kind of get into you, so that you can suddenly be kind of ambushed by that mentality, even when you think that you've broken free from it. So I reckon we'll only ever be able to read the Bible Christianly, if you like, when we basically clobber texting, boot it out, when we debunk proof texting, when we stop treating the Bible as this sort of textbook It would be very, very helpful, if we could get rid of all the chapters and verses. But beyond that, it's the chapter and verse mentality. If we could only learn to read it like, sensible human beings, like sensible adults, unafraid of questioning what it says, and definitely unafraid to challenge some of the very unchristian ways in which it is interpreted. So, while some zealous Bible basher would doubtless send me straight to hell without passing go, I have to tell you that there have been occasions when I have advised people in the context of a counselling situation, when I've advised people to stop reading the Bible for their own mental health's sake. Hopefully not, long term or permanently or whatever, but basically, I could see that the way in which the Bible had been bred into them meant that, all these pages and all these words had the effect of something deeply negative. It was guilt-inducing, shame-inducing, and so on and so forth. So here in the shed, however, we are trying to look at the Bible in some different ways, of interpreting the Bible in some different ways, and hopefully this can help us to connect or to reconnect with the Bible in ways that are constructive, ways that are mentally and emotionally healthy, and which are spiritually enriching. That's the point. That's what we're trying to do. So next week, I'm going to sort of shoot back into the Hebrew Scriptures, what we call the Old Testament again, and focus on the Psalms, which is really often called the hymn book of the Bible. But I like to call it gut-level religion, because the beautiful thing about the Psalms is, that some of them express sentiments and express, kind of statements that, from a theological point of view, may seem to be way off, really. But the thing is, the Psalms are not coming from the head, they're coming from the gut primarily. So there are songs of joy, yes, lots of those, which is what most, good Christians like to focus on. But actually, when you look more carefully, there are also songs of lament and songs of protest too. Those of you U2 fans will remember that they always used to finish their gigs with a song called 40, which was Psalm 40. And it always ended up with the crowd sort of, responding back. It was almost like a liturgical thing where Bono was singing and the crowd would be singing back, how long to sing this song? Bono says, actually, that the Psalms were his first taste of inspirational music. He said the words and poetry did for him what rigorous religious argument could never ever do. So yeah, next week, that's what we're going to be looking at. Gut-level religion. And I think you're going to like it, actually. So now we're going to kind of come round and have a prayer together. And so you may like to join in with this little prayer with me, if you like. Just take a moment of quiet. Loving God, revealed to us in Jesus, may we distrust every way that excludes fellow travellers who happen to see things differently to us. May we distrust every claim to truth where truth is not wedded to love. May we distrust every choice that does not bring us more fully alive to ourselves, to others, and to all your creation. Amen. So, we're going to have a toast right now. And if you've got a drink handy, which of course I have over here, then you might like to pour yourself a drink. Going easy today because I've been to this wedding weekend, which is why my voice may be a tone or two lower. So, if you have your drink, then please hold it in your hand. Friends, join me for a toast to love. Toast to love among friends, to love between partners, to love in wedding ceremonies, to love where it's least expected in life. It's a toast to all the beautiful things around us in God's creation. And here right now, it's peeing down. So here's a toast to rain, because goodness knows we need rain at times. It's just that sometimes we'd like to be able to turn it off as well. Here's a toast to another week about to begin. May we live this week, may we live each day, each moment as fully and savouringly, if there's such a word, as we possibly can. Dear friends, to life. L'chaim. I'll show you something, actually. A little something that I came across recently. I like to show you a bird, don't I? This is a purple sandpiper, which I've never seen before. But saw this down on the coast, down in Dorset, and I couldn't quite believe what it was. But then I looked, and some other people had posted in a kind of bird watchers post that they'd seen several pairs of purple sandpipers. What I want you to do, though, I love this shot of it, which I managed to get. Just look at the eye. It's a wonderful thing, to look another creature in the eye. There's something very wonderful about that, because when we look into the eyes of others, there's a certain sense in which we're looking into a mirror, because, we are all one in this world. And that is not just with human beings, but also with creatures. So looking into the eye of a little bird or a chimpanzee or whatever it is a way of recognizing the otherness of the other, but also our fundamental union and oneness as creatures in God's world. Fantastic. Well, if you like this, if you like what I'm doing here in the shed, this is the moment of the collection that you have to have in churches. If you like what I'm doing, you can support me through this coffee site, the link of which is always at the top of the Holy Shed Facebook page. And we love the fact that so many of you feel that you want to support us in this way, which is fantastic. So one little notice is I've been talking about retreats I'm doing, the one at Amadown, which is coming, I mentioned, and there's posts about that on Facebook, but a bit further ahead, so I'll just flag it now as a kind of advance notice, is 25th to the 27th of March next year. I'm leading a retreat. I've just agreed it at Holland House in Worcester, which will be on the theme of the art of living soulfully. You can find Holland House easily if you Google it, and you'll find details about it there. Brilliant. Okay, so a blessing. The blessing of God, the eternal goodwill of God, the shalom and salam of God, the wildness and warmth of God be among us and between us now and always. Amen. And that's just about it. I'm going to play you a song to go out with in a moment, which is by our good friend here in the shed. She's been here many times, Kerry Newcomer, and it's a song called Breathe In, Breathe Out, and it's just a lovely reminder of how we can relish things and enjoy things, or even endure things at times, but then we can also let go of them, because that's what life is. It's this rhythm of breathe in, breathe out. And, it's a bit like that song, George Harrison's of All Things Will Pass, and it's sometimes good to remember it's not just that the bad things will pass, good things will too. And life is just that sort of process of breathing in and breathing out. So that's what I'm going to play you out with today. Meanwhile, there's a nice little line in, actually, I remember, which says, to live is to love so many things. And I like that. To live is to love so many things. Fly on beautiful wax wings, breathe it in and breathe it out, let it go. So have a great week this week. Go well. Be kind to people around you, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you very soon. Stay human. Bye.
Live, we'll learn what we love most. Embrace it all and hold it close. Breathe it in and breathe it out. Let it go. Live is to love so many things, to fly on beautiful wax wings. Breathe it in and breathe it out. Let it go. Breathe in, breathe out. Let it go. Breathe in, breathe out. Let it go. Breathe in, breathe out. Let it go, let it go. I held anger like a coal, burning hot but not let go, with the thought that I could throw it at someone. Such a hard lesson to learn. My own hand is what got burned. Breathe it in and breathe it out. Let it go. Breathe in, breathe out. Let it go. Breathe in, breathe out. Let it go. Breathe in, breathe out. Let it go, let it go. What is one. What is done. Let it go. What is real. What we feel, then let it go. I saw one candle in the night become 1,000 lights. Breathe it in and breathe it out. Let it go. Life is fleeting, this I know, short and draped in marigolds. Breathe it in and breathe it out. Let it go.